Retirement 5 Fun. I was blessed to work 18 years in a corporate career that allowed me to retire early on a reduced pension. This channel is to talk about my journey to FI and what fun activities I plan to do in my retirement. Hello everyone. Well, what a day. It was quite a bit of a day for me today. Just trying to finish up my last few months of work and bombarded with questions, emails to answer, and problems to solve. It's a bit of a challenge some days, but most days are good. It's just today was one of those days. So I appreciate you joining me. Today's topic will be how did I become financial independent and what tips do I have to share with yourself? So we're at 68 days before I retire, and these are the tips that I want to share with you about how I got there. Here we go. So what I would recommend is, if you're young, if you're in your 20s and 30s, make saving money your number one priority. I don't mean to not have fun. There's ways to have fun. Not all the time does it have to cost you that much money. And don't always cheap out. Don't be the person that doesn't pay the bill when you leave, or not leaving a good tip that is reasonable for the work that you, or the service you received. Those things, I appreciate that. Those are important, but there's other areas where you could save. And I'll go through this list, and hopefully some of these are good ideas. Maybe some of them you have more questions about. Just leave those in the comments. Here we go. So yeah, as I mentioned, make it a hobby and have fun with it. That's what I do. I look at ways that I could save. I look at different angles. I make sure to negotiate when it's the time. If I'm buying a used new car, I always look at what is it worth. I look at different places. I do a lot of research on the big items I purchase. And on the little items, I just make good judgment and see if things are of good value. But we'll get down that in a few minutes here. When you're looking at your utility bill, you might have services such as water, electricity, gas, and even internet. I put that in that same category. Every, let's say, 4 years, I will go and look and see if there's a better company out there with lower prices, or if they have a deal coming up. I'll go and look and see, well, what kind of deals do they have compared to what I'm paying? Or if my contract's coming up with one of the utilities, I'll go and look at their competitors and see what they're offering. And also, you could go back to your current service provider and say, well, I could get a better rate somewhere else. What do you have for loyalty? And call the loyalty program folks, or ask them to forward you to the loyalty program. And usually you could get a better deal. My recommendation there is look at YouTube and look at some different ways for that specific category, how to negotiate a better price. And it does a significant change over the years, so I'd recommend that. On the internet side of things, I try and stay with the same provider, but I always try and negotiate the best price with them when the services come up. And I don't have cable. I've cut that many years ago. We do stream a lot. We use Netflix, and we use the free apps to stream, and that we get by with that. And we also have a HD antenna that catches 6 to 7 channels, which are the channels we typically watch anyways on cable. So I didn't see any point of getting more services on our cable. So all I have is internet, and we use our cell phones for our phones, so we don't have any landlines. And that saves us quite a bit of money over the year. So I recommend looking into that. A similar thing you could be looking at is your home and car insurance. There's some apps out there or some sites out there where you could look at various brokers and see what the best price is. That's what I did in the last few times. The only thing I would recommend is make sure you see reviews and make sure that these providers are giving you what you want, that you're not, that when you need the coverage and when something does happen, that you feel confident that you'll get paid out and that you have the insurance to protect yourself. That's the main purpose. So it's not always about cheaping out and getting the cheapest service, but it's getting the best price for the best value and for the best services. So keep that in mind when you're shopping. That's what I did recently and over the last maybe 5 years, 6 years, and it's paid out quite a bit. So it saved me probably 1/3 of my insurance over the years. Next up is your first house. When I was shopping for my first house, I just got tired of having people living downstairs of me or living upstairs for me, depending if I was in an apartment or renting a house. My last place was the top of a house, and it was a revolving door of people living downstairs. I didn't really particularly like that. I felt unsafe in sometimes, and I lived in an okay neighborhood, so it didn't make too much sense to me. So at that point, I decided, well, I saved up enough money. It was during the .com era where you actually could make money off of technology, and I cashed out and used that to put a down payment on my house. So 30 years ago, there was houses in this neighborhood that I live in, and they weren't new houses, but they were reasonable. I looked at a house that I could grow into, and at the same time, I didn't buy too much of a house. So what I mean by that is that, I had planned always to have a family. I had planned to play music in my house and be able to play instruments and not be turned down or asked to turn my music down, unless it's my wife. So I always looked at doing these things, and I looked at a house where I could set up a little bit of a rehearsal space, have a couple of rooms for when my family grows and when I get married. And I also, not at the time, but now that I think of it, having a bungalow is kind of handy to have just one floor where you could live there till you're ready to go into a retirement home or into a nursing home. Not necessarily what we're going to do, but it just happened to be that we could potentially do that if we wanted to. So look at what you really need and look at, the whole duration of your time and figure out exactly, do you need that big of a house? Because the issue with doing that is that a few years after, you will find out that, if you got too small of a house, then you're like, I'm going to upgrade. And within 10 years, prices have gone up quite a bit over those 10 years. And whatever you make on your house, you're going to be putting a little bit more on that next house. And you just keep doing that over and over, and you lose money that way. So try and get it right the first time, and don't overprice yourself. Try and get a house that's within your means and probably below your means. The key thing that I was looking at was, if I lost my job, could I still pay the mortgage? And was the mortgage close to what rent is? And in that case, I said, well, it was a good idea to go into a house and pay it off as though it was rent. And I think that's a good way to approach it. I'm not sure exactly where you live, but maybe do that math and see if it works for you. So I spoke about this one before, but I think it's important enough to repeat again. Cutting the cable. I use an HD antenna, and I get all the channels that I really need. And then I use streaming services on my Roku streamer, and you could use a Fire Stick or an Apple TV to stream different content. And you have to pick what fits your lifestyle and what you think is a better tool. But ask your friends, do some research. They're not expensive to purchase for a Roku or a Fire Stick. The Apple TV is a little bit higher up there, but you could buy a used one and still have a good quality streaming service or provider. So I recommend doing that. It's a good way of doing it, unless you're getting a super deal on your cable, which typically that's not the case. When you bundle everything up, sometimes they give you a bit of a deal, but I still would say that this is probably a good solution, and I found that we've saved quite a bit of money doing it that way. And at the same time, we're still enjoying our TV in the winter months, of course. And at the same time, when there's nothing on, you could go find something else to do, of course, and do some stuff outside and socialize with your friends and whatnot. So, I mean, it's not, you don't want to be tied to your TV because you're paying high prices for your cable. So I touched on this one before. Live below your means. I don't mean live at your means or don't overspend. Just basically, The Wealthy Barber kind of has a good point. It's a great book to read if you're just starting things out. The principle is basically pay yourself first. Put away 10% of your earnings into the bank and save those funds for your future self. And you will see the compound interest and compound growth of your funds through stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, even interest and bonds. All those funds grow, and when you're ready to retire, you'll be surprised how much you'll save just by that 10%. Some people say to aim 15 or 20%. I leave it up to you, depending on, what I found is that as I grew older, the less money I needed to have to pay the bills. So I would put more away of my bonus every year, and I didn't treat myself very much as far as saying, oh, let's buy a new car, let's buy a boat, let's buy a trailer. I always tried to make do with what I had, with the promise that in the future I'll be able to enjoy my retirement earlier. And it worked out for me, so I'd recommend looking into doing that. So one disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. I'm only doing this as a hobby, and please consult with a financial advisor or planner if you're choosing to make an investment based on trying to retire early. It's well worth the time to meet with them. I met with two prior to taking the plunge into early retirement to make sure I had the right numbers and also to make sure that I wasn't overlooking anything. In both cases, the information came back very similar. Therefore, I felt pretty confident with my decision. So I recommend doing that. Most times, they're a free service with your company. Look into that, see if it's something you could delve into and see if somebody could help you out and make sure that you're making the right decision for yourself. So going back to living below your means, I talked already about buying the right house for yourself, and if that's the case, or don't rent a 3-bedroom if you only need one, that sort of thing. Always try and be realistic with your purchases. Same goes with a car or truck or SUV or minivan. If you look at what you actually need, it's not for the 5 times a year that you go camping. It's what can you do within your means, and what's a reliable vehicle that you won't need to bring to the garage very often, unless you're a mechanic yourself. And even if you're a mechanic, you know that you don't want to be fixing a car all the time. It's not the funnest thing you need a car sometimes to fix your car, so it's not always the best solution. So look for a vehicle that's reliable. 2 to 4 years old is a good area, I find. And then you have a car for a good 8 years. And what I do is I try and hang on to that car for as long as I can. And as my mechanic always says, well, the car you have, why buy something else that you don't know the reliability? Here you have a vehicle that you've had for 6-7 years. It's still running. It'll get you where you need to go. Only put the money aside and for a future vehicle. So that's what I've done, and it's paid out over the years. So now moving to banks. There's so many options out there that it could be overwhelming. So do your research, look at financial magazines, I look at Money Sense. I look at Money Saver, Canadian Money Saver magazine, and those typically have these ideas of which banks are out there and what their costs are. There's also websites where you could find out what are the differences between banks. And what I'm getting at is that sometimes you're paying rates for the services you receive, and sometimes those online banks have better pricing, sometimes no fees, sometimes they're built into the product. So do your research, and I think you'll find a good solution where you could save a little bit of extra money from the fees and still get the services you're looking for. And similar to that, Visas, MasterCards, American Express, there's a lot of information out there, and there's loyalty programs that you could get with these credit cards. So sometimes it's worth using a credit card to be able to get the loyalty points, money back, but it's also a bit of a trap that you could end up spending more than you could pay, and you fall into that high interest credit that you have to pay back. I know there's folks out there that say, cut your credit cards. So there's a reason for that, and it could be a trap. So meaning that you could, eventually lose your job or have a big expense and not be able to pay the credit card. And that's where it starts building and compounding, and not a good situation. So if you need a credit card, do your research and try and pay off your credit card every month. That's the key. I shouldn't say try. You should pay off your credit card every month and try and get the money back or loyalty programs. It's a good option. It's difficult to go through life without a credit card, especially if you're doing some traveling or paying things online. So there's other options out there, but I just would recommend do some research on that. You'll probably save some money in the long run. I have one more, and this is my last one, is if you're buying food for your family or for yourself and you're looking at getting some good pricing, there's some apps out there. Flip is one where you could compare different stores and see what the products are and see what the prices are from store to store. It may not be like for like, but if you type in, let's say, bacon or eggs or bread, and you see which store is offering what price for a similar product, you could save some time and some money by going to the store that has the lower costs. My wife does a lot of this for us. I really appreciate what she does. She looks at sales, and we never buy anything that's not on sale, and it seems to work out week after week. So yeah, food bills is becoming a big problem, so do your research there. Like I say, you could use a app like Flip or similar online tools to compare prices, and price matching is another option that you could do at some locations as well. So yeah, keep that in mind, and I think that covers pretty much all the items I wanted to share with you. So thank you for watching. If you have other tips for our viewers, please leave them in the comments, like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.